The Dallas Cowboys signed a player to a contract extension, but it's not who you think. We'll tell you who it is next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon was out at Cowboys camp on Sunday, the team's first padded practice. But before we get to that, we actually had some Cowboys news. The Cowboys have signed a player to a contract extension. No, it's not Micah Parsons. It is Jake Ferguson on a new deal that will pay him $30 million guaranteed over the next 5 total years. What were your reactions or your thoughts once you heard this move happen, Landon?
Well, I think we started hearing rumblings that there were other players that might be getting extensions soon. And when that started happening, like, it didn't feel like it was Tyler Smith. Like, I don't know why, but it didn't feel like that was the name that was kind of being thrown around, but it didn't feel like that was necessarily the case. And to me, like, I felt like that Ferguson was the one that next kind of made sense. Now, you and I have discussed on this show that, at least with my opinion, is that I felt like they needed to see Ferguson one more year to kind of just confirm what they had seen previously. But lo and behold, here they are taking a stance that many of us thought that they would never take, right? And signing a guy early before, kind of making them prove it again. And getting, I guess, decent value at the deal. I mean, if Fergie had a really huge year this year with all the extra attention going Pickens and CD Lambs this way, I mean, maybe he moves the needle a little bit higher there. But I think it was not surprising that someone got signed that wasn't Micah Parsons. I think it was a little bit surprising that they specifically with Ferguson's situation, because I felt like after the injury and that whole situation, they would have liked to have seen it one more year.
Yeah, and I've got mixed thoughts on this, but nothing super serious. Like I've been saying, like, even if he were to have that breakout year that you mentioned, you might be paying him $2 to $3 million more per year if you waited until next offseason, because all of the big contracts are already up. Like, we saw Trey McBride got his big deal this offseason. Brock Bowers isn't due for more money for a while. George Kittle, I don't believe, is going to get a new contract anytime soon. So the market's kind of set. So you could have protected yourself a little bit in case Ferguson had a down year, or he didn't improve as a blocker, or if Schoonmaker steps up, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But having said all of that, it's still not a bad deal, because again, the numbers that come out, 4 years, $52 million, ignore that, right? What you really want to know is the guaranteed money, and it's $30 million guaranteed over the next 4 years, not including this year, which really makes this like a practical deal of like 3 years, $34 million if you're including this year, which is not really much of anything. So that's why I don't care that much, but it is a little interesting that they decided to do it now rather than just waiting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's right, because why? And I think it's very clearly to kind of, promote to this Micah Parsons narrative that we will sign folks. I mean, I think they could have done this deal at any time. You're right. Like, I don't know that they deal this deal now, or, like you said, the market's pretty much set. They clearly had decided, I guess, at this point that they wanted to sign him. And so, why do this deal now? I
have a guess.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think it's because they're planning on using the franchise tag on somebody next year. Now, I don't think it's Micah, because I do think Micah's going to get a deal. I've been pretty consistent with that.
I know it is.
Well, it could be Deron Bland, right? Bland has a chance to have a big year. It's not going to be Tyler Smith, because he's got the 5th-year option. I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone like Brandon Aubrey, who's going to be a free agent after this year. You could franchise tag Aubrey, and it's actually a pretty good deal. But I just think the Cowboys use that franchise tag more than almost any other team in the league. Getting Ferguson done now checks that box. It also opens you up to the possibility of franchise tagging George Pickens if you want to keep him around for another year.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It just, just saving that in case that situation goes like that, and you wanted to save him, and while you're trying to continue to work a long-term deal, because it's clear that they like him, so that if they wanted to kind of continue to dangle the carrot a little bit longer before giving him a long-term deal.
It's $28 million though next year for a receiver.
Yeah, I know, and the truth is that he probably doesn't. I mean, yeah, I guess that's probably right what he would make per year. Right? Is that the deal that you would?
Well, here's what you could do. You could also use like the transition tag, which I think is going to be like 24 million. And that's more into the range of, but I think the whole point is like, I think just checking this box helps you get to that point if you want to get there.
You don't have to have it like, assigned for Ferguson in the future. You've got it available in case something goes wrong.
Yeah.
Lots of other stuff to talk about with the tight ends though, because today at practice, it was interesting that this happened on the first day of pads, because there was a lot of interesting stuff, including, unfortunately, the Brevin Span Ford injury that's come out. It sounds like it's an ankle sprain. There hasn't been a ton of reporting on it yet.
The Cowboys don't believe it's serious. They're going to get an MRI, but it sounds like this could be maybe a couple week absence, but nothing like season threatening.
Yeah, it didn't look terrible. It looks like Joe Hoyt was standing right next to me and kind of was re-showing me the video. It looks like someone just fell on him, I think.
Yeah.
So hopefully, and he kind of limped off and was helped to the tent a little bit. Was able to kind of walk on in his own power. So yeah, with the sprain, that's not too bad. And then obviously Schoonmaker, who has continued to have a nice camp. I think you've seen him. He did have one drop today that he needed to catch, but I thought that he had a couple other catches that were really nice. I saw him blocking. In certain segments, and his blocking looks like it's continuing to improve. And then I think the other thing that's super interesting at the position that we should talk about, and we'll get into a little bit more of the formational stuff. And what's interesting is I saw a lot of offensive tackle, like whether it's an unbalanced line or just simply having Awesome Richards out there as a tight end. Lots of alternate tight ends playing tight ends. And Lipke was also one of them. There was definitely at least one play where I saw Awesome Richards and Lipke both shift and motion across the formation pre-snap to get into a tight end and a wing position. So lots of interesting uses of tight ends, lots of use of tight ends, and then lots of interesting guys playing tight end. The position is clearly going to be important for this team. And I think that's something that was kind of the emphasis I wanted to get to, is clearly today was, if any indication, they're going to be using the position quite a bit in a lot of different ways too.
And real quickly, John Stevens actually had a couple of reps where he was with the first team, which I still think it's going to be an uphill battle for John Stevens to make the 53-man roster. But this is somebody who is different than any other tight end on the roster. And now he's back making plays during practice. I thought that was interesting as well.
That was crazy. I was really wild, because it was like, I was running across to get to the sideline to get a good angle on that very first 11-on-11 snap. And I saw 49 check into the huddle, and I'm like, I must have missed the first snap. What's going on? But no, the very first padded snap, they had John Stevens out there, which was really kind of interesting. So yeah, obviously they're at least getting looks at all these guys, and they mentioned Princeton Fant's name as well. So they have a lot of bodies, a lot of folks they like, and they all kind of do different things. But the position is going to be really important to this team.
All right, let's talk about some other notes and news from camp, which Landon was on the sidelines covering this team. We'll talk about some formation stuff, where players are lining up. We will get to all of that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chats, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all of the overreactions that we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy this year. Me and Landon, yes, we're getting Landon to play fantasy football this year. We are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. I love Yahoo Fantasy. It's the only app that I use when I play my fantasy, where I host my fantasy leagues. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. And it all begins on August 4th. So stay tuned and start by creating or joining a fantasy football league over on yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That is yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. All right, Landon, let's empty your notebook. What did you see from Cowboys camp that you want to talk about?
All right, let's start big, right? First, I really felt the energy that everyone was talking about, right? And it's everywhere, right? It's the difference in just, and I was telling somebody, I think this is my fifth or fourth, I gotta recount, head coach, camp that I've been to, right? And this was without a doubt the most energy we've seen. And I hate to keep using the same word that everyone else is using, but it's like it's hard to encapsulate all of it, right? It's the coaches. They're all younger, they're all moving, they're all running. Even Eberflus is kind of go, and like everyone's getting around and dancing and like there's music playing constantly. It's not even just like when they're trying to. Yeah, good. I mean, it depends on your taste in music, I guess. But it felt like the music was better this year. So yeah, and it's just kind of constantly going, and it's not interfering with practice. Everyone's kind of keeping their rhythm and up to beat and on their toes and moving around. Like no one's just standing around, really. Everyone's kind of like bouncing on their toes a little bit. So I think it's the energy infusion has really helped kind of get people excited about playing, and I think that's why you hear everyone talking so glowingly about playing for Schottenheimer. Again, we'll see. Maybe does this mean anything? Does maybe not, but this is the reality there. I really want to talk about Schottenheimer's answer and then the reality of what we saw in practice of in regards to the 9-on-7 versus 7 and 7-on-7 versus 11-on-11 stuff. I so much support that that message, and I was so glad to see it too. And it was interesting because I was at the press conference. I saw him talk about that, and I was really excited to hear, and I was excited to kind of get out there. And we had heard that there were going to be one-on-ones potentially, and there ended up not being any one-on-ones. As soon as they broke out into individual groups, they came back together and immediately just got into 11-on-11s, and we're just basically doing that for almost the entire practice. And so, which I think was great, because I think what that does is it gives you the opportunity to practice the plays as they are. I understand the need and the hyper, focus on that. And maybe you're trying to compartmentalize that. But I really agree with what Schottenheimer was saying, is that you need to get the opportunity to get CD Lamb specifically and George Pickens specifically, the guys that are going to be playing for you on Sunday, practice blocking safeties, blocking corners, because that's a huge part of being a good run game. Go ask Kyle Shanahan. So, yeah, I think – it was really great to kind of see him talk about that. And then again, it just was another example. And there were even more examples of Schottenheimer promising or saying something and then following it up. I saw a ton of condensed formations. To say that there was a lot of motion is like, I was talking to Vox Lombardi about it, and he's said it best. It's different than going from like 8% motion to 15% motion. Like we had talked about. Remember when we were tracking all that and tracking, like there's motion on almost every single play.
I think he said he charted today's practice, and there was 90% of the offensive plays had some variation of motion.
And I will even go this far. Most of those plays had multiple shifts and motion. So alignment, a shift, another shift, and then motion, and then snap. Like, what it was like. So fully getting a good look at what the defense and how they're reacting, and kind of getting every opportunity to get all the information you can from the defense before you snap it. This is a kind of promise fulfilled by Schottenheimer. And another one. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, that was real. And today in padded practice today was, the day to kind of even further take another step, proving it. And I think that the things that we saw were everything that we've been promised.
And I'm glad to hear about the receivers blocking, because Kyle Shanahan has a very famous phrase, no block, Sorry, I want to make sure I get it
No
right.
rock.
No rock, no block, no rock. And that's true. Like we've seen before, you could have these receivers out here that get really physical with the corner, and it looks like you're blocking, and it doesn't actually help the run game. There's certain ways that a receiver has to block down on a linebacker or block a corner to create a run game or a run lane for the running back. And I think it's really important that you practice that. So great to hear. What else did you see from the Cowboys out of camp?
Well, I would say if we're gonna kind of zero in a little bit more, the offense today, obviously first day with pads, looked ahead in the run game. Like it looked like they were moving by, especially on the first group. They looked like they were moving bodies, even without Terrence Steele. Adeniji looked really good, just kind of out there, looked adept, didn't have any problem kind of moving folks. So it looks like they may have a good answer for a Steele backup if they need to, because so far, obviously, but like they were able to move folks. The interior trio were really, really kind of moving guys off the ball, which again, Cowboys defense, what happy and sad with that note, I'm sure.
Can I ask you something about
the
guards real quick? Because we saw on Saturday, Robert Jones was working with the first team at right guard with Tyler Booker as the backup. And Brian Schottenheimer talked about it during the press conference today, how he thought Robert Jones deserved some more looks with the first team, and that Booker maybe hit a little bit of a rookie wall, and they want to make sure that he's staying engaged. We saw Booker with the first team on Sunday. In your eyes, how big is the gap between those two players?
Talent wise?
Well, just from what you saw in practice.
Well, pretty big. Tyler Booker looks really good. Like, and look, I think, look, we should all be fans, because I think what he's done to come in here and to be a sounding board for Booker and for him to come in and be like a big brother situation for Booker is huge, especially when he's supposed to be competing for this job. And when he signed on, he didn't know they were going to draft Tyler Booker. Nope. Like he didn't sign on to do this specifically. He signed on to compete for a starting job, and he is competing for a starting job. But he's also teaching a young player how to be a professional football player, because he knows that there's a good chance that this guy's going to be the starter ahead of him. Love that mentality. So either way, I think we're in the hands of a talented, big body mover who's going to do some good things in the NFL.
We're going to talk some more about the defense in just a second, but I do need to ask you about Tyler Guyton, because he's been one of the guys that I've been watching pretty close in all of these practices. You got to see him up close. What do you think?
It's real. Like we needed to see it in pads. And again, consistency is the game at offensive line. So we're not putting the anointing oil on anybody yet. Thank you, Bill. But I think what we've seen so far is what we need to see, right? A guy that is like, you're playing with more consistency, playing with more bend, playing with better leverage, playing with better speed, playing with more confidence. Like the technique looks right. And it's not even just that the technique looks right. It's that, sometimes the guys know what to do, but they're not, Tyler Booker said it best, right? It's like doing algebra in a fist fight, right? And it's really a hard job that these guys have to do, and their heads are spinning. And it's part of the reason that Booker probably needed a second to kind of, gather his thoughts here. Guyton has transformed his body while I think kind of relearning what it takes to be a professional. I listened to his interview. If you guys saw the terrible picture of me on Twitter, that I was making a face because it was hot, not because of Guyton's answers. But yeah, I think you just see a different guy, and he's playing like a different guy, which I think is important. And we got to see consistency. But really, so far so good.
All right, let's talk about some of the defensive notes, including Andrew Booth putting together back-to-back strong practices. I don't really want to believe it, but it seems like it's happening. We'll break it down next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever before, and prices on the app actually drop the closer that we get to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. One of my favorite things about Gametime is that you can go to the app, you can see exactly what your seats are going to look like before you buy. I actually just bought tickets for a Sunday night football game this year. It was so easy, it was so convenient. I cannot recommend Gametime enough. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Bets show. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, let's talk about defense. And we need to start with Andrew Booth. The Cowboys are a little banged up at corner right now. You have Trayvon Diggs out, Savon Ravel still out. But Andrew Booth stepped up on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, we look, and Elam continues to step up, but has played really good football too. He made some plays as well. But we've heard Elam's name. I think at this point we can say the drumbeat is out for Elam, right? Like it's been consistent all the way through, and it continued into pads today. But Andrew Booth, the last practice was, I think, Saturday's practice or Friday's practice. I've lost track. Saturday's practice, he had a really good day. And then today at practice, he had at least 2 pass breakups and then another play where he was right there in tight coverage. And it was really just impressive just to see him kind of, fully kind of aware and competitive. And because it just felt like there's just times when he loses it, it's like he's lost his mind for a second. I mean, he's just like he's forgot what he was supposed to be doing. There's just so many times when you would watch him in the last few seasons that he's he's completely in the wrong spot, just completely doesn't look like he knew what the coverage was. And it, it's just surprising to kind of see him consistently playing good football. I will also say that much in the way that the Cowboys offense seemed a little bit ahead in the run game, it felt like the Cowboys defense was a little bit ahead in the pass game. They, really were giving tight windows. I think the Cowboys offense, obviously needs to tweak things a little bit now that we're in pads. The windows have tightened a little bit. The timing changes a little bit. So I would not be surprised if they had a big day tomorrow. But today, it wasn't just Booth necessarily that had a great day, though he did. Clark, the undrafted free agent kid, 38 or whatever his name is, Elijah Clark. He looked really good. I noticed him a couple different times. Troy Pride was good at a couple different points. He had a nice little battle with CeeDee Lamb. They yelled at each other. So the coverage was really competitive and tight. And I imagine that we're going to get a bounce back day from the big guys tomorrow in the practice.
And I guess this is where some of my negative views of the Cowboys come in. I saw Andrew Booth play last year, and it was so bad. I saw him with the Vikings. It was awful, but maybe a change in scheme will help. We'll see. I think he's going to need to string together multiple weeks of solid practices before I even get a little bit excited, but it is noteworthy nonetheless. I do want to ask you about Maris Leofau, the Cowboys' second-year linebacker from Notre Dame. He's kind of one of those guys I've been circling, hey, if he can break out, maybe we'll feel better about this linebacker situation. How did he look on Sunday?
Well, I mean, I'm also going to go ahead and throw in Damone Clark's name, who I think also looked really, really good and has continued to look really good. And I think, again, you kind of have been harping on it all offseason, right? About Eberflus and about how he's just known as a linebacker whisperer. And I think he's done the trick, at least with Damone Clark. I mean, I think with Leofau, we felt like we knew that guy was going to be good and that just needed a little bit of time. I certainly see it. I see a level of physicality. I think has come with his confidence. He looks more comfortable in what he's doing. For Clark, it's he's always had the physicality and the athleticism. He's one of the most athletic guys on the team. It's always just been about being able to recognize what he's doing and what's happening. And then I think what's happened is that they've simplified the scheme to the point where he's playing fast, he's playing free. I think it's nice to see with Murray, out, to see these guys kind of step up and play really decent football at different points.
Real quick on offense before we go, and I was going to ask you this at the beginning. Joe Milton. I know it's a backup quarterback, but what did you see from Milton today?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue with Milton is very clear. He's just got to pull the trigger quicker. Like he's just holding on to the ball too long. It's taking him a little bit longer to process. And I think the issue also is that, and I think part of this is that we're in a practice, and he knows that we're in a practice, so he's trying to hold on to it to make the throw. I think in the games, if it was a real game, he would take off and run half the times when he's just kind of standing back there and waiting for the. So I think that he probably is more successful than what I'm seeing, but I think that doesn't change what his issue is and what he needs to do. And I think it's not necessarily seeing it. I think it's really trusting it and throwing the ball and realizing what NFL covered looks like and NFL open looks like.
So overall, strong practice with the Cowboys. It seems like it was lots of energy. Have you noticed, is it noticeable how much different the energy is compared to like a Jason Garrett practice that you've been to, or a Mike McCarthy? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And someone described it as more of a college atmosphere, and that's what it feels like, right? Everything's very physical too. I mean, these guys were chomping at the bit to really put the pads on. You could tell. I mean, there was people were on the ground too much. They were trying to keep guys off the ground, but there were physical football being played, and I think part of that is just the anticipation, the energy that's being created by this coaching staff to get them excited for physical football.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Go follow the Locked On Cowboys TikTok account. Try to get that up to 1,000 followers so we can give you some more live content out at Cowboys camp. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Landon will be out of camp all week, and we'll continue to provide you the absolute best updates.